I'm not going to, like I said, I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time on this. There's loads of evidence elsewhere. This is one from even the mainstream press around the fact that the world is changing. There are all sorts of different bits of content. We've covered this in lots of ground. Suffice to say that we do know that print volumes are still changing. They're still very, they're fluctuating. The hardware sales, there's lots of peaks, lots of troughs, lots of things are moving. But what we do know coming back into this is that digitization is still growing, and that actually you can drive conversations around digitization simply because most people have moved their entire lives into inboxes and email, and that comes with a whole raft of problems. Very similar to the types of problems we fixed when we first bought print management. If you think about that, 10 years ago, we don't know where this paper's going, we don't know who printed it, we don't know what was on it, all of that good stuff, no security. That has just picked up because everyone's life is now stuffed into their Outlook or their Gmail. So we know that these things are right, and you could pick any number of sources to back these things up. Okay. We also have one other thing, and I wanted to include this in the why. We are very aware that software has a different margin expectation, a different, different pricing structure, all of those things in comparison to hardware and hardware servicing. And at times it can feel a little bit lean. We're aware of the fact that as we move, there is still a need to utilize hardware in opportunities to make those margins, to make these things profitable in line with salespeople's targets and with business expectations on margin of profit and so on. So sometimes pure software, we can sit and talk about the benefits, the technical benefits of the product, but on occasion, the commercial benefits need to realign as well. So what are we talking about today? Okay, well, we are talking about Square9. I did say I'm not going to dwell on it, but I am going to remind you that Square9 is an American software house focused in the ECM capture workflow type market. They've been around for 2 decades. They have about 100 employees. They're headquartered on the East Coast of the US. There are around 14,000 plus organizations utilizing it, and that can equate to 65,000 plus seats, or decent big numbers. But the Americans, whilst they're marvelous, they didn't travel outside of North America until recently, where they joined us. Or we joined them. And so this is a very mature product, has all of those unicorn features that you're thinking of, or we're thinking of, in terms of look, feel, support, commercials, all of those good things. But you're not going to be seeing the logo on everybody's desk from 5 different resellers. This is a fairly much still unicorn product, and we don't want to get it to that flooded place either. Okay. And this is the particular lump of Square9 that we're going to be talking about. There are 4 core components to the Square9 portfolio. They are the capture engine, the ECM tool, so that's global capture and global search. They are a process action tool called Global Action, and then the global forms tool as well. And what this offers us really is this Lego brick for capture and import. And you can see here that Global Capture has a lovely drag and drop workflow editor. It's really cool to sit with customers and build this out. And it can already do hugely complex things. The really critical piece around Global Capture, if you haven't spent any time with it, under pains to not dwell on this today, is that Global Capture can have multiple outcomes. You can use any of the components multiple times. It's not like an auto store type product where I have to link lots of workflows together to do different things. I can have a document or a file or a piece of data now go through a process into multiple locations, have multiple outcomes. I can even, if you look at the little green diamonds in the middle there, force user interaction. So with most capture engines, of course, if something works, it goes where it's supposed to go. If it doesn't work, it gets kicked out into exceptions. But in Square9 terms, I can force validation in the middle. I can get users to interact with documents and data as well. So those are the fairly unique pieces about global capture. It's, as you'd expect, commercially competitive. The support's great because it's from us, and the support from the US is great for us as well. So all of that kind of good stuff. Great product. Reach out to Lee, Max, Ben, all the rest of the guys, Rob, around what it is and what it does, because it's a really cool thing. But it's this bit on the left-hand side, the nodes, the Lego bricks, that we're really interested in. Because what we've realized is that global capture does offer us a massive footprint, you know, a foundation to be able to build customers' workflow and do what they want to do. And most people that we work with in Global Capture are massively impressed by the flexibility of it. And at the bottom of that little nodes panel there, you'll see that there's a couple of kind of customized things. We've always been able in Global Capture to reach out to just about any kind of application or data source, but it's been a bit scripty. It's been a bit mega nerd, if you go that way. I'm not supposed to call devs that because we have some as friends. They don't get that much, but we do have them. But what we do know is that there were things that we were seeing time and time again, or we were creating time and time again. And we originally created a thing called the call assembly. Well, they were call assemblies, but we bundled some up and we put them on our price book. And these were a list of, you know, kind of scripted things that we were doing time and time again for data augmentation, for interactions with different things. But you still had to kind of build config files, and they were a little bit clunky in terms of implementation. Still much more efficient than doing everything at a custom level, but just a bit clunky. Square 9 made some changes in version 2.3 when they gave us the ability to create custom nodes. They gave us the ability to take those bits of script, those call assembly components that we'd had on our price book, and turn them into much more usable, much more functional elements that were a lot easier to configure. If you like to just make this thing super quick in terms of deployment, things that were quite complex, and kind of build them into an easier framework. So the way I want to think about this is what we had before is Lego bricks. Like I say, that's how I refer to Global Capture's nodes, the components, and those Lego bricks are pretty cool. We could do some pretty good things within the framework. You know, we could build just about anything, but think of it as the Lego City stuff. Yeah, we're gonna get a cool toy, and that's kind of cool. We can, you know, make it look the right color, the right shape, make it do what we want it to do. But by doing some customization, we can take that level up again. We can go from smart to extremely smart. And that's really what we're talking about, is better Lego bricks, or rather more Lego bricks. Those core foundation ones are still going to be doing a lot of the main driving, but the stuff that we're bringing to the table now is just going to really refine those processes and make them much more easy to shape and to do what we want to do with them. And I'm not going to blast through all of these in any depth. This isn't a technical overview, but it's to kind of say, look, that palette of Lego bricks, as I just said, has been increased. If you look at the bottom there, all the green ones and the black PaperCut one there, those are these new tools that are being driven by Selectec. These are Selectec products. They are not Square 9 products. And I am at pains to actually say this, okay? So these are written by and supported by Selectec, utilizing the Square 9 custom node API. And the kind of things that we're adding, you can see this is actually content off of a PDF, by the way. So you can get this from Lee, Max, Ben, any of the team, even me. The thing is, if you ask me, I'll probably forget. It'll take you days. Whereas if you ask one of the organized ones, you'll get it quite quickly. But these are the kind of things that we've included. And there's some real headline ones in there, certainly around interaction with our PaperCut, our friends at PaperCut there, the workflow tracking. So if you want to be able to track and report on files or documents, where they landed in a workflow, were they recognized, were they validated, and importantly for you NPS guys, that can be documents that were never actually printed. They were imported out of email addresses. They were imported or captured from pure data sources, ERP systems, backend systems, and it really helps you make PaperCut stay relevant and involved. XML processing sounds kind of crazy, but we're now utilizing a capture engine to create files. Okay, so where users, small to medium businesses, get data files that aren't human readable, and we'll take a look at this in a minute, and we can use this node to physically create documents that those users can actually do. We've added an auto print node, so you can actually dump documents, either bring them in from any import source. You You could scan them, you could save them, you could print them. They could simply be in an email, they could be anything, and you could auto print and you can combine them. So I'd like one copy out of one paper deck, please. I'd like another copy out of another paper deck with a watermark, just utilizing drivers, things like this. So this palette has massively increased in its capability to do things. Some of them are branded, as you can see there, the Xero one. Selectec actually processes all of its invoice into the Xero platform. So we now have a branded Xero connector, that's ours, okay? And some of them are really quite smart and they really add functionality. That ODBC communicator, this is a critical one. Square9 has always had the ability to capture field information and look at databases and interact with SQL and create CSVs. If you wanted to do something more powerful than that, you'd needed to dump the data to SQL, run queries and all that good stuff. And what we've got now is a node that enables us to do this, and it increases the functionality of this capture tool with real focus. It's now not based only on SQL. It's pretty much any data source as suggested by ODBC, but more importantly, it also interacts really cleverly now with line item and multi-value fields, which in any capture engine, in any ECM are tricky to do. And this has really been a focus of our build up in terms of that data piece. We found we were doing so many projects that needed us to do a lot in SQL that we've actually just decided to build a better interaction for databases. And we'll take a look at it. Having said that, I wasn't going to go through them line by line. I've gone through quite a lot of them line by line. But the general message of this is that piece of us finding edges in global capture that were very possible, but perhaps took longer, which meant that the professional services, the scoping of a project took more time, was more complex, was more potentially more expensive, or slightly scary, was a little bit more unknown. We've taken quite a lot of that away. So we know that we can deal with any data source through ODBC. We know that we can track our workflows. We know that we can create any text file output very simply. We know that we can interact with different stuff in different ways. So what's actually better in short terms? You know, if you've played with global capture, where are the real headline things that we've actually feel we've really improved? One is dates, okay? Dates are a constant pain point in nearly all capture engines. Capturing dates isn't really difficult. Getting dates to agree to the same format, if you want to power things like Power BI or BI instances, database backends, ERPs, getting that date formatted in the right way, it can actually be relatively tricky. So we have a project, and most of these things that we've done have been driven by customer requirements. They've been things that we've had to solve. And we were, and still do, had a project in the Nordics, and we worked out that we were supporting something like 23 different date formats across multiple languages. And for any of you guys out there going to add dates, that's a normal thing. We have Norwegians actually writing day of the week dot space digit, and then the month in longhand, and then the year in 4-digit format. And they'll vary that in different languages. So what we've written is a way to use a bit of an AI engine, and also to really structure those complex date formats so that we can get everything working to such a point that we can drive Power BI reporting on invoice processes fully automatically. That database and source interaction, it's now very easy and simple for us to work between line items, multi-values, different sources. We can throw things into SQL, we can chuck things out to any ODBC, we can work with simple spreadsheets, do anything we want to do, and without any level of custom scripting. It's all within the node, and we'll take a look at how it's done. So you can see there that line items and multi-values piece as well. Print, you can now include print in automated workflow. Really simple, logical thing to do. The amount of workflow people, the amount of companies that still sit there and say, my task in the day is to pull through my emails and go file print. Don't do that, just forward it to this. Yes, of course, you can do it with PaperCut email to print, but this also means that I can have it as only print this after an approval process, strip out certain pages. do this, do that. So now, you know, and it's more than just simple print. I can drop it to multiple locations. I can change the drivers. I can do whatever I want. Your ability now to talk about processes that didn't start by scanning a piece of paper or even just capturing a PDF. And we'll take a look at what I actually mean. But imagine an EDI invoice coming in as an XML file, or a piece of data that you get out of a production system, that being ripped up into a visible PDF, the field values being driven. So stuff that you wouldn't if you're a print management, you know, and even if you're talking about PDFs and workflows and bits and pieces, this is stuff where the PDF doesn't even exist. And you can now still stay relevant, and you can still track that in your PaperCut. You can still create reports on where you want to go. And this last two are really important to me because we've got interaction with the amazing folder product. If you haven't seen any of our content, then please do reach out to the guys, find out where you're talking about, because we have this wonderful thing called folder. And folder enables us to do things with any file in any storage. Now we have the ability now, as we'll show you in a moment, to import and export things to and from folder appliances. Now, this means that you can suddenly, rather than in traditional capture terms that says, I need this document to be in an email inbox, or I need this file to be in a watch folder or come from an MFD, utilizing folder, we can use any location for capture. So if you want to use a disparate bit of Google capture, you know, Google Drive, if you want to find any file that meets a certain set of criteria across any parts of storage, you want to use the folder mobile capture client, feel free. And in response, rather than needing to have a billion different connectors, I can export stuff into that folder appliance, and I can use literally any storage. So Box, Dropbox, Teams, SharePoint, you know, legacy SMB, WebDAV locations, SFTP services, you name it, you can hook global capture into it. So those are the things that we really feel that we've added the value to in terms of global capture. What does that mean from customers? Just the headlines in the first few weeks of talking about this. Capture anything anywhere. What I just said, you don't need to have the awkward conversation with the customer about, right, that file needs to get moved to that location to be processed. Stick it in a folder in any piece of storage and it's fair game. Include print automation. You guys sell printers, or a lot of you do. You have print management tools. It's a well-known medium. Print is now, you know, a bit of a stumbler. Do I try and build it into my workflow because then I've got this, you know, well, actually, let's just build it as part of it. And it keeps those pages clicking. You want to process those documents, you want to have them validated, recognized, process route, that's absolutely brilliant. Tell you what, we'll also just chuck our copy out, because why wouldn't you? Yeah. Cheaper data integration. It for us, and I've just done the thing where I read my own bullet points, which I absolutely hate, but where people wanted custom data, I need this to go to this ERP in this XML format, blah, 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 blah. And we're looking, is this 1 day? Is it 2 days? Is it 3 days? Is it a week? Is it a month? You know, does it take my customer with my 5 or 10,000 quid budget? I mean, I can't do this because I need 10,000 quid's worth of services. Well, it's now a day, not 3 days or 5 days. We do want services. We want you to make revenue from services. It's logical, but there needs to be a nice balancing act, guys. There needs to be, there's some services, but what there isn't is millions and millions of days of services, because you're less likely to win the projects and they're less likely to be delivered in a way that the customer's happy with. Okay. There's a lot more data out there. We are seeing smaller and smaller organizations having to deal with EDI feeds, with data feeds, with ERP outputs, with all of this good stuff. And do you know what? A lot of smaller organizations still actually need for someone in a warehouse to be able to read a document, or for someone in a warehouse to be able to agree what something should look like, or in an office, or what an invoice should be, because it wasn't approved and it didn't work. And now we can do that. And software companies in the main that don't deal with printed documents, don't deal with pages, don't totally understand what that might look like. So I can get my piece of manufacturing software to spit out a bunch of stuff, but someone's still going to type that into a delivery note. Okay, do you want to automate that? All right, let's do it with this. And they're small enough to do it with some global capture at a couple of 3,000 quid. They don't need 10, 20, 30 grand's worth of Planet Press. There's lots more in there, and we keep coming across these things on a daily basis. Okay, so let's just take a look at some of it. If I can just show you exactly how nodes kind of behave. Like I said, I'm not about to start taking you through each and every node, but I'm going to show you some very simple front end stuff. Okay, so this is the global capture piece. I can design workflows. This is fairly complex, with some of the stuff we're doing, but workflows can start as simply as this. This one's an automated print, but you can see, whereas before, if I wanted to do some specific data entry, it's going to let me do what I want it to do. There we go. It would ask me to simply send ourselves out to a server path, and then I'd be building config files to make this work, which was very effective, and it was still better than nothing. But it wasn't as easy as saying, do you know what? I'd actually like to print 2 copies, not 1. So let's just take this out. And here I go. I'm having a bit of a moment with my VM. There we go. And I'm gonna chuck that one to a PDF as well. Okay, let's just add a bit of data. PDF, there you go. And this is how easy it is for me to suddenly build new workflows and new components and all of the things that we built. So I'd like to parse dates, please. Okay, let's build an AI engine for dates. Tell me where the date is coming in and tell me where the date is going out. And you can see that I can turn on different cultures. I can also build exceptions and bits and pieces. So you can see how easy these things have been made. This is a particular favorite, not because it's the most easy, but because this has put this in places that make it more viable, even for the likes of me, who are not that smart, let's be honest. Yeah, I could turn around and say, I'd like to deal with line items and say where they're going to go, please. I could decide how to build full table fields without needing to write SQL queries. It's all right here. Any of these nodes, if we take a look at the management of them, again, really easy to implement. There isn't something super tricky or super nasty about us trying to work out how to do this. There we go. Let's just try and get this to work. You can see that these are all Selectec nodes. Okay, we have versioning, all the things you'd expect from Selectec in terms of support, documentation, all of that stuff comes with them. They were written in-house, as you can see. And if I want to add a node into Square9, it really is as simple as just get the download file that we send you. There it is. I'm going to drop this one in and it should ask me to overwrite. Here you go. And replace it. There we are. That's how easy it is to add a node into Square9 Global Capture. It's kind of as simple as that. And in terms of configuration to them, super easy. You just actually, if there is any fixed config, you'll see what the actual, the front end looks like. There can be fixed config if you want to make all instances exactly the same. And I can even just, I can see the content. So from the support perspective, which elements are included, which bits are written on, easy to support. We can just make this easy. And it can work, some of them work in the global capture tool, some of them work in the Square9 global action tool, different functionality. This one, as I've mentioned, that I'm actually playing with here is that PaperCut tracking node. This is kind of unique. There are different bits of capture software that will work with the PaperCut embedded connector, but with this one, it's doing something slightly different, and it's actually tracking the outcome of workflows, not just printed pages. And I will show you what I mean in a moment. Okay, so I have the ability to create and add these different nodes and get them doing different things. And I can put them in different places as well. So from a licensing perspective, you license these nodes per global capture server. Okay, a global capture server can have multiple capture engines running. So a customer might decide to have one engine processing accounts payable, another one doing HR onboarding, and so on. And one set of nodes can service both if you want them to, and you can utilize them as many times as you like and as many workflows as you like. That's important. It is not per instance, it's not per connection or anything else, it's per server. And that gives you a lot of flexibility, because you might talk to a customer and just as a default decide to add dates, add range separators, add folder exports. Okay, so you'll be able to see exactly what's going on here. And like I said, they will simply be added into the bottom of your palette, if you're going to use that word. I don't think the Americans do, but I quite like it as a phrase. There we go. And I just drag and drop and configure them all of them are documented, and that's kind of it. So I just wanted to show you a couple of things that, you know, some of them super nerdy, as you can see, but let's just move away from this into a little portal. I should have a bunch of errored files in here. No, there we go. Kind of wanted to show you a couple of bits and pieces. Difficult to point out in some ways here, but you can see here that I've got this particular job. It went through the workflow that you've just seen, and you can see that it was tracked in PaperCut. We commented out that it was an invoice. It was billed against a particular account. Yeah, the username that actually did that, where it went, and we created a bit of metadata in there that was the invoice number and the supplier. So when we take a look at that, you'll see that in a little moment. Okay, but there we go. There should be another one. List and ranges. Really want to show you this. This is a particular note. Let me bring this through. That you didn't ever think you needed, and you can't do it in any other particular way. Here it is. All right. There's nothing to actually see, but we are very good with capture tools at capturing the information that's actually on a document. But what happens if that data isn't complete in digital terms? It might be in human readable terms, but it isn't in the actual data terms that we need. And a good example of this is if I take a look on this document, I captured a reference number, and I'm sorry about the instance. Can you see here? Captured this reference number, okay? And the reference actually said on this document, do you know what, guys? This document covers contracts or invoice numbers from 100 to 110. And the reality is that in my ERP system, in my human readable global search environment, I needed to not have that reference. I needed to have all 10 references, as you can see. So what that node actually does is goes off, reads that, and says, do you know what? I need to create all of those other bits. And this was something that we would never talk about. We bumped into this kind of data all the time, but we never really talked about it. It was like the elephant in the room that says, do you know what? You're going to capture that, but I really need an easy way for you to create those other bits. Now you can do it by drag and dropping. And the thing for me about that is, if I come back to that workflow, is not that I'm going to sit, I could sell it this way and say to a customer, oh, we have a thing. But these are components that you might decide, and it will become kind of important as to why. Let me go and just bring my workflow back up so you can see where that particular range separator has been built into the workflow. It's just right here. Okay, and you can see that I told it exactly where the range list and stuff were, and I can configure that. I can also use a table to do that. So we do that where we would put those values against a particular document type in a database using our lovely database lookup tool. And I can have this dynamically split based on the document. This wouldn't be something that we were talking about because it was very difficult to do. But now when we're talking to customers about workflow, I can add to my, if you like, my sales list and my wish list of, yeah, I can have a license of global capture, but I'm also probably going to by default throw the date time thing in, the range separator thing in, probably going to include my PaperCut node because obviously I'm a PaperCut instance and I want to know what's going on there. And there is a lot of benefit actually to exactly how these things can help you apart from just technically. I mentioned that data thing where we were working on pure data feeds. I can't show you it as a workflow without actually doing so much clicking and making it run because there's nothing to actually see. I drop a file in one end and an image comes out the other. It's very difficult for me to prove that what I'm doing is happening. So I'm happy to do it if you want to send us a data file, if you want to talk to us and work on that, see what's actually going on. But what you can see here on this PowerPoint slide is is an XML file. Yeah, okay. Now this is actually a Danish standard public sector invoice. It's a thing called an OIO file, but this is possible for anything. This is an XML file. You know, we could start to build anything out. And you can see that we built our little workflow. So what goes in is the messy, non-human readable code. There's the workflow that's actually driving it. And we're doing a whole bunch of other stuff in there in terms of lookups and validation and data and SQL and all kinds of other things not related to creating the document. But then what's coming out of it at the back end is in this case Danish, because as I said, it's a Danish OIO invoice there, but that's a human readable invoice that's coming out of the XML. And it's all being done in global capture. Then, of course, we can send it for validation. As you can see, I can export that PDF to a particular system. I can launch it out into folder, into global search, out to Microsoft locations, out to disk, wherever I might want that to be, with all of the data also extracted and written, as you can see here from our little node there, written directly into a database or a text file or anything else we might want to do. So we really are now driving global capture to a point where we are absolutely not reliant on there being a PDF image from a scanner or an inbox or anything else. All right. So something a little bit different. Okay.